I just learned some jazz today, it's true.
What's up, guys? It's episode 50 of the Irie Lemon podcast. Liz, what just happened?
We had these two incredible Enneagram coaches on, Meredith and Joe, and they, of course, start out by going through a quick overview of each type, but then we get into some really good stuff. We talk about communication styles within Enneagram. What do you think about the episode?
I learned so much, and as a guy who's probably too alpha male who doesn't want to learn about anything about emotions or personal stuff, I do think it was so valuable.
Yeah.
And you probably heard that in the episode. I was definitely listening a lot, and for me, paying attention for over an hour takes a lot of strength. So.
And you guys, this team, they coach couples, they coach business partnerships, they coach groups. So they have so much insight, such great perspective. I think that you're going to really learn a ton from this episode. So enjoy.
What's up, guys? It's Vince from the Irie Lemon podcast. Make sure you subscribe, and subscribe, baby.
Oh, wait, you guys, I have to compliment your music because I love it.
Oh,
I love the music intro, and it was just this week that I was like, wait a minute. You're saying, and I'm a terrible singer, but it's like, you're gonna learn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're learning on the podcast. I finally put it together. I thought it was just a really great tune. That it was
that's
catchy.
his friend's song.
I'm like, oh, we're learning together. It's great.
Exactly. Might not be jazz, but we're going to learn. So guys, today, we've got a really special treat. Can we talk about how amazing this is? We have two actual physical Enneagram coaches in the house today. You guys, I'm so glad you're here. Meredith and Joe, please introduce yourselves.
Oh, and it looks like I'm going to start. Well, first of all, you guys, we are so delighted to be here. This is so fun. I mean, the fact that we just get to hang and talk Enneagram, this is fantastic. We love the way that you guys incorporate Enneagram language into your podcast. You talk about it quite a bit in a way that's really natural. And I think I love that. So we're super, super glad to be here. I'm Meredith Scrotenboer, half of Enneagram.grow is our website. Right. And of course, we are growing with the Enneagram together. So co-founder Joe Graham.
Yeah, my name's Joe Graham. Good to be with you. Super excited to talk Enneagram with you.
Me too.
And hopefully for all the listeners out there, we can, if you're like way into the Enneagram, we can give you a few tips and tricks that we've picked up along the way as coaches. And if you're brand new, we can give you a baseline framework for, okay, what is this thing that everybody's talking about? Because if you're an Enneagram 7 and you experience FOMO all the time, fear of missing out, you may have had coffee with somebody or two people and they're like talking about these numbers, these wings, these arrows, these lines, these tresspasses, and you have no idea what they're talking about. But today, let's try to clear that up for folks and give them at least a, hey, how do I dip my toe into this water?
Yeah, that sounds really good. You guys, for folks who maybe haven't, I know that you've done some Enneagram podcasts already.
Yep.
But can we kind of just set the groundwork, Joe, for where we're going to go with this? Just because it kind of gives people a comfort level. We're going to talk about what is this tool? What are the triads, which is kind of some insider language. We're going to quickly go through the numbers, and then we're going to talk communication styles.
Great.
Yay. I'm excited.
All right, so the Enneagram, if you Google it, it is the wild west of the internet in terms of what you will find. All kinds of different images, all kinds of different thinkers. It's an ancient personality tool. It's as someone who's read a lot about the Enneagram, I still am not clear where it exactly came from because so many of the scholars say something different. So we put it in the category of like a wisdom tool, kind of like a proverb, like this ancient wisdom that we have that has gone through the generations, and then increasingly in North America, it's gotten popular in probably the last 40, 50 years in a number of different fields. And so it's a 9-sided diagram. One way I think about it is like, imagine we were all standing at the top floor of a building and there were 9 different windows looking down on the street below. Each window has a different viewpoint, and each personality type views life through that window. And so it's an invitation to discover which window do I look at life through, and then how do I also understand all the other 8 windows, because those are the other people I have to interact with in my life. And so when we teach the Enneagram, we talk about all humans have this search that is driven by belonging, identity, and purpose. At a foundational level, all of us want to know who we're with, what we do, and then what is the gift that we bring in the world? Like, what is our purpose? Like, so who am I with? Who am I? And what then do I do? And so this search is driven by core motivations, and that's really what the Enneagram is all about. So it is about the 9 numbers, but like taking it to the next level is understanding that underneath the surface, you have thoughts, feelings, that are driving all the actions that you have. And really the personal work is to get in touch with those thoughts and feelings so that you know how those behaviors and actions show up in others and in you and how others experience you.
Yeah.
And so we call these core desires, core fears, core strengths, core longings, core weaknesses. Core desires are things that you believe will bring you fulfillment. That's kind of what you're always trying to pursue because you think it'll satisfy you. Core strengths are the things that you're naturally really good at. Core fears, things that you avoid or things that you try to prevent from happening. Core longings, this is where we break into like the shame, Brene Brown language real quick, like the message your heart wants to hear. So you have a story that you're telling yourself. The core longing is actually the story you want others to tell you. Right? And so the moral perfectionist, right? Yeah, so, or like the Enneagram 3, I'll go right to the 3s. I got 2 3s here with me. You want us to tell you how amazing you are.
Yeah.
And how much you've achieved. Right? And so that is, and that's just kind of, it's trying to understand where that core longing comes from. And then there is a shadow side to the Enneagram, and this is where I think people get tripped up with it so fast, is the core weaknesses. Because there is a shadow side to doing this deep interpersonal work of like, oh, do I really think that? Do I really feel that when I enter a room and this happens and then that happens? Then do I just always leave when there's conflict because I'm afraid of it, right? And so what we do is try to put a baseline framework of we have these thoughts, feelings, and actions that are driven by these core motivations, and then there's all the things that happen to us, like our story.
Yeah.
And the Enneagram is a personality tool that's trying to help us find the intersection of our story, our core motivations, and then what we're best at and what we're worst at.
I just learned so much in 5 minutes.
I know.
We should also tell people what we identify as.
Oh, there we
and
go.
that's the language that we like to use is instead of saying, I'm a 3, I like to say, I identify as a 3-wing 2. And Vince, you are?
Identify as a 3-wing 4.
Yes. Liz?
I identify as a 2-wing 3.
Excellent. And Joe?
I identify as a 5-wing 6.
Yes. So you guys, this is so exciting today because as we dive deeper into this content, there's only 4 of us at the table, but what's so cool is that well, obviously Vince and I both identifying as 3s. We have a stance that we share. You have a stance and you have a stance. So we're actually representing the Enneagram
perfect.
well.
Communication stances.
Yes, as we start to dive into communication. So,
See what we did there, guys?
Yep, all pre-planned.
310 credit, you know.
I know.
Before we dive into the triad, something that we want to say, we like to think of this work as inner work, self-work that is other focused, okay? Because yes, this journey does start with self. It's about self-awareness. But what we believe is that when you become more self-aware, you can actually love others better.
Yes.
Okay, so when we talk about becoming better humans, when you know yourself more, you can love others better.
Pretty much why I do it. Like I feel like literally that is why I'm so into it.
Yes.
I feel like I don't know if 2s are more into it than other types.
Sure.
But I'm like knee deep into it that people are like, Liz, we're good with it. But I think it's so I can help people better. Anyway,
Yes,
that
and
was
so
a
you can
little side
have
note.
compassion and grace, and in relationships and also with ourselves. Words matter. What we tell ourselves matters. I can look back on my journey and go, oh, that's why I reacted the way I did years ago before I knew the Enneagram. That's why I made that decision. That's why I had that struggle. It's like retroactive grace that you can give yourself once you know your type and kind of land on it. Last thing before we dive into the triads, it's important to know the whole tool. You don't want to just take a deep dive into your number. Yeah. You want to learn all the numbers. That's where the beauty is. And I know, Vince,
that's also where the challenge is.
This is relatively new for you.
Right. Well, we always say it's not permission. Like, so if someone says, "Oh, I just did that because I'm a 2," like to me and Meredith, we like, "Oh, that's actually that's not self-empowerment.
Yeah,
that's permission for bad behavior.
100%.
Yes.
Right, and it's also not a sword or a shield, so you can't like block people out, cut people down.
Right.
Some of the numbers think the shield is a weapon too. You can't just like bluntly hit people in the face with your personality and your communication
I feel
style.
like the best part, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is that there's definitely like red flags and green flags when you go into health and then unhealth. And I feel like there's no good or bad any type, and we're all at some level of health within our type. And to your point, we can always be proving. There's never like, oh, I've learned the Enneagram, now it's over.
Yeah.
It's like an ongoing journey.
Yeah, so real quick, and if you can imagine the diagram in front of you, it's like a 9-sided circle with these lines and arrows that go through it. And so moment to moment, like you actually have access to 5 of the numbers. So you have what are called 2 wings. And so the Enneagram 1 sits on the top right of the circle and it has a wing of 9 and 2. And then you have one that's dominant, so you kind of like prefer one of those wings over the other, but you actually still have access to the other wing. It's like when you go and pick out paint color, how many shades of blue are there when you go to the store? Well, there's that many Enneagram 1s, if you will.
Yeah.
And then there's a place you go in health when you're like fully aware of your core type. You actually move across the diagram and take on the high qualities of another number. And then there's also a place of stress where like you start to take on the lower qualities of that stress path. And so at any given moment, you have access to 5 of the 9 numbers on the Enneagram, but that's really kind of the moment-to-moment experience of life.
Right. Yeah.
And so the Enneagram is simply just an invitation to become aware of what's happening moment to moment, or like right after the moment, and then to have language to describe, oh, this is what I was experiencing when I felt anxiety. And then my response to that anxiety is I wanted to have security. So then I started over planning. And so it's kind of diving deep into those core thoughts and feelings. And people will ask us like, hey, can your number change? And we tend to not think so. The only reason I think it would, a traumatic event might, like trauma or some kind of experience like that, something really, really difficult. But like we picked a tree as our logo for growing with the Enneagram because these thoughts and feelings, they are entrenched in us. And in order to get down there, we do have to move some dirt and we have to move things around. And then what is seen are the actions and behaviors. But the first step in the Enneagram is to realize that it's all connected.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that you have to go deeper into it a little bit.
And from a 3 perspective, mainly because I became friends with Liz, I've been taking a lot of time to personal develop. And Enneagram has helped a lot. There isn't like a lot of things I've seen on 3-ring 4s, but even just learning about my type and like, okay, I do have a sensitive side of me. I'm not just all alpha male slay dragons. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like I can cry. You know what I'm saying? And be vulnerable. And I think, especially in business, because as a 3, we're competitive, you want to win. Those are the things that are stopping you, right? From my perspective. It's never like, oh, read this book and it'll teach you how to like hire people better. That's not what's stopping you because that information is there. You can Google that information. What's stopping you is like the other stuff inside you that is blocking you from whatever you're trying to grasp onto, or are you grasping too hard, right? And so as a 3, I definitely realized that there's some things, and the analogy I've been using with people lately is that think about some sand and you grasp it, right? You grasp it too hard, then there's like no sand in there, right? You think about grabbing sand, but you like cup it, there's like way more. You know, so stop trying to have this tight grasp on life and situations and things. As a 3, I think we do that a lot. We're always trying to like hold it on and like there's nothing left, and we're just worried about what's in our hand, which is no sand. But we just open up a little bit more.
That's beautiful.
That's some growth right there, guys.
There you go.
Let's get a 12 graphic out.
That took me a year to get there.
You're welcome, everyone.
Anyway, I'm very excited for you guys to. See, I moved past that real quick.
I know. Emotions. He's like, I'm off.
Well, and that's such a great example though, because like every number in its own way is trying to control something.
Yeah.
And like the growth happens when you start to open that hand and go, I can't control everything.
Yeah.
But I can control my behavior.
Yep.
And that in order to control your behavior, you actually have to get in touch with your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Which for the 3 of us, we're just gonna bury those.
Yeah.
Like 5s and 3s, like
Not important, not essential.
yeah, I cry by myself. That's the Enneagram 5 thing. I cry by myself.
Funny.
Okay, so you guys, let's dive in to what is known as the triads, okay? So this is a little bit of insider language for folks who may not know the Enneagram well. We're gonna teach you today, okay, what are the triads?
Yeah, so the Enneagram system organizes around 3 primary emotions, and all of us have these 3 primary emotions, but we have one that is dominant. And so if you're still out there struggling, like, okay, what number am I actually? Am I this number or that number? Am I a 2, a 9, or a 7? You have to pay attention to that primary moment, because earlier when I was talking about those moment-to-moment feelings, they're driven by this primary emotion. And so it's anger, shame, and anxiety. Those are the 3 primary emotions. And so we'll start with the gut triad, which is the anger triad. Includes Enneagram 8, 9, and 1. In response to feeling anger, the Enneagram 8, 9, and 1 move towards justice. They want to see things made right. And so how do we correct this wrong? How do we go to action?
Yeah.
And so each number in that triad has a different experience of anger. The 8, we all experience, because it's very external if you have any 8s in your life.
It's very obvious who the 8s are.
Right. I'm married to an 8. I love the Enneagram 8.
I'm not going to shout anybody out right now, but you know who you are.
But the 8s, here's the thing. We always start with the 8s in our workshops because we know they can handle it.
Is it a little, absolutely. And are they one of the easier ones to identify? Not necessarily.
Depends.
I feel like it's so outwardly less
Well, that's like a trick question for an Enneagram coach because I can identify it, but it's more important that they identify it, if you know what I mean, right? So the 8 has an external experience. The 1 is a little bit more internal. They're called the moral perfectionist. The 8's called the protective challenger. The 1 is the moral perfectionist. They want things to be good and right, and they think anger may be a negative emotion, so sometimes they just kind of push that anger down, or they don't let it come out, but it does come out in like their work ethic and how they see how things are flawed. And then the 9 isn't sure what to do with that emotion. They kind of vacillate between this internal and external experience. And the 3, 9, and 6 all have that in common with that primary emotion in their triad.
Is that being doing repressed, or is that different?
8, 9. Okay, yes, that's different.
Okay.
The repressed centers are different, Liz, and we'll touch on that. But we will touch on that when we talk communication styles.
Okay.
Yes.
So Meredith, you want to take us just quick 8, 9, 1?
Super fast, you guys.
Yeah,
It's going to be lightning round Enneagram numbers. Here we go. Okay, so 8, protective challenger, also known as just the challenger. They're decisive. They can be domineering. They can be really strong leaders. What they fear is being betrayed. They fear being vulnerable. They fear not being in control. Their desire is to be in control, to be able to protect themselves and to protect those in their inner circle. Okay, the 9.
And if you're in the inner circle of an 8,
yes.
it is the best thing in the world.
Yes, because they will go to bat for you.
Oh yeah,
they will go to
I had
bat for
almost
you.
saved me from drowning this summer.
Oh my gosh, Liz. Yeah, I mean, we all need 8s in our lives. And like Joe said, if you're in that inner circle, it's a really precious place to be. As much as they want to protect you, they also want you to protect them, which they may not verbalize because they're too busy having like a rough, tough exterior, okay? So 9, peaceful mediator, okay? 9s are receptive. They can be complacent. I oftentimes think of 9s as like the non-judgmental friend. Like they're a safe place. When you think about a mediator, what do you need in a good mediator? Someone who can see things from all sides. And that's what a 9 is so capable of. The 9 sits at the top of the diagram, can see through all the lenses of the other numbers. But self-awareness, I believe, is hardest for the 9. It's hardest to really become self-aware because they're so used to deferring to others. They go along to get along.
You know how many times I have to ask a 9 about their life before they'll answer it?
Yes.
Because they just keep trying to deflect and deflect.
Exactly.
And deflect. Like literally, it's like I've asked you 20.
Yeah, they are so wanting to keep peace in the relationship.
Especially when things aren't great and they don't want to get into something.
They don't, right, exactly. They
But
want
I think-
peace in their inner life and peace in their relationships.
Yeah.
They don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
For sure.
Not a problem.
1s are moral perfectionists or reformers. 1s are disciplined. They're self-controlled. 1s have an inner critic that's going to beat them up.
Yeah.
Like that is tough for a 1. And it's really good for 1s to become self-aware. Some will even like name their inner critic to stop it.
Yeah.
Because 1s spend a lot of time just thinking things through and beating themselves up. 1's desire to see goodness in the world and desire to see things made better. So if you have a 1 in your life and they're coming across as critical, be aware of the fact that they're doing it for your own good.
They think they load the dishwasher better. So let them reload the dishwasher.
They have most of the time a great way of doing things. They think their way is
hold
the
on,
best.
Hold on, do we need to talk about the dishwasher?
No.
Wait,
That's always like
does your husband know his number?
No, well, he's a 2 as well.
Oh,
But
I
he
love
is a
that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but he is a wing 1.
Okay.
But don't worry, I let him do all the dishes. I don't even try. But they always use
I just
it
want
as
to
like the
affirm that
example.
you let him do the dishes.
Oh, hell yeah. And the laundry.
Okay,
He
all
thinks
right.
he does laundry better, guys. And grocery shop.
Convenient.
He doesn't trust me to grocery shop.
Interesting.
Can't do
Sorry,
it.
No, that's so good. Okay,
There's
Joe.
perks.
Absolutely. Jump into the next triad, the feeling triad, the heart
God.
triad.
All right, here we
yes,
go.
this is ours.
Okay.
This is our triad.
Isn't it funny how we're both in the feelings triad, but how we handle it, or how we,
Super
our
different.
relationship with feelings is complete opposite. But I think that's so important for people to understand. You can be in the feelings triad even if your feelings are repressed.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We're feelings.
Absolutely.
I
So,
could use a little more repression in the feelings.
this is the heart triad, the feeling center of the Enneagram. And it's interesting too,
know.
like how many you do interact with a lot of 3s and 2s. Like they're really
okay,
common
are
numbers.
there more 3s and 2s? Are we more into Enneagram?
That's a really good question, Liz. What do you want to say about that joke? 'Cause I
For
feel
example,
like you got
my 8
something with
doesn't
it.
believe in Enneagram, so like he doesn't know he's an 8.
Well, there's that too.
But me knowing has made me not want to kill him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But he's not into it.
Yeah, I
So-
think it's the social constructs of like gender norms, where you live culturally, race, all these
And religions,
things.
obviously, like
Yeah,
certain
it's
religions are more into
yeah,
it.
and so I think there are social constructs or constructs and contracts. Like people are like, like the American power couple is the guy's a 3 and the girl is a 2.
How funny.
And that image and idea is put somewhere into
Yeah.
all of us, but like when you do those
Yeah.
exercises and you're like really uncomfortable because you have these narratives that you've picked up somewhere that you don't actually agree with. So
That's true.
But then I've heard people say there's a lot of 6s too. And so we don't necessarily have the qualitative data like a Strengths Finders does, where like the Enneagram is just so qualitative and conceptual.
Totally.
So
Okay.
this triad though, this is the shame triad, right? So the feeling, emotional struggle is shame. Constantly wondering, am I good enough? I think "Never Enough," that song from The Greatest Showman, is the triad song for this. Like never enough, never enough. Like you made all the success you ever need to make, and they're singing that song, and he's like, you see the moment he looks at his family, and he's gonna go past the boundary of what he absolutely needs to. And I just love the look on Hugh Jackman's face when he's like, I've arrived. And it's not enough. Like particularly for the Enneagram 3s, like it's the moment of like face down, like just stop right there, end the movie. But it wouldn't be a good movie if
Like
there
when
wasn't
Vince
also
and I
the struggle.
first started talking, he's like, Liz, you're at about a 6 of your capacity. We're gonna need you to just kind of dial that up a bit, what you're producing and outputting. You're about your gas tank are about a 6 full. Meanwhile, I thought I just
Right.
bought this house. I'm 10 years in. Like I thought I'm doing good.
You're doing
Apparently
great.
not.
You're doing
A
great.
6 good.
Amazing.
A 6
I'm sorry
good.
about that.
No,
You know what?
I
I was having a
appreciate
3 moment.
No,
Yeah.
I love him for that because it pushed me.
That's
Right.
one of the gifts that
Yeah.
a 3 brings to the world
Yeah,
is hope.
absolutely.
I trust
Hope.
me.
Set the
You
goals.
didn't tell
Go
me 'cause
after
you
the
didn't
goals.
think I
You
could
can
do
do
it.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyways, so in response to all this shame we feel of not being enough in the feelings triad, we pursue significance. Or what contribution can I make? What thing can I accomplish? What person can I help, right? For the 2, it's about helping.
Yeah.
For the 3, it's about achieving. For the 4, it's about making their own mark in the world, kind of really being an individualist. And so the 2 tends to have a more external expression of this energy. The 4 tends to withdraw a little bit. There's a lot. I think 4 is maybe one of the most misunderstood numbers. The 4 and the 5 are probably the most misunderstood, which is also connected to communication style. The 4, 5, and 9 all have the same communication stance, which is why they're often misunderstood.
That's cool.
So,
I can't wait
and then
to
the
hear about
3 has really strong emotions, but they don't always let them out because they're focused on achieving.
Yes.
And so that's why the superpower.
They look at emotions as like delaying the achievement.
We don't have time.
But I'm
we don't
like,
have time for that.
Yeah, but this is why you go into a room and you know what you need to be to win that room.
Always.
Because you have such a strong sense of what those emotions are.
Yeah.
And also what they talk about being in conflict with a 3 is difficult because they're going to do whatever they need to do to win the conflict.
100%.
We use emotions as information. Like we take it in and we use it as information. We don't necessarily use our own emotions to feel them.
Yeah, I'll agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
I always say I've always been an observer. I pay attention.
However, Vince, with your 4 wing, and you were saying this earlier, tapping into some more of those deep emotions as of late, which is good. That is good self-work.
Yeah, it's been hard.
Proud of you.
I've been doing it though, because when I was a kid, I was very sensitive. Like or younger, anything would make me cry. If I lost a game, I was very sensitive as a kid. But then I don't know what happened, but it definitely switched probably around 8 years old, 9 years old, where I just stopped crying.
You did what you need to teach me. You learned how to put those emotions in a box.
Yeah. And so it's definitely
you're taught that too. Like that comes up from something.
Exactly. And so I definitely remember like switching and then having it, but never letting it come out or affect me from whatever I need to get.
And I am incapable of that, which is like so funny.
I can be pissed off with somebody. I wouldn't even. If it's like a work, I won't even like release it. But you push me, I will for sure. Right? Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I forced him last week. Ended up crying, but that's why I didn't want to do it. But I like made him. Yeah. Okay, keep going.
You guys, I love your partnership.
Lots of emotions in the heart triad.
He's like, get us out of here.
So much.
Okay,
can we explain the 2, 3?
Yeah, we'll do that right
that's
now.
what we
Vince.
do.
Perfect segue, my friend. On it. Okay,
Continue moving
so 2,
on.
supportive advisor. The supportive advisor or the helper. Caring, generous. Like Liz just oozes care and generosity. 2s are so good at meeting the needs of others. They can walk in a room, read who needs what, and recognize that they can probably meet all those needs. But where a 2 is going to fall short for themselves is they oftentimes won't recognize their own needs.
Yeah.
And a 2 might feel like, hey, I know your need, therefore you need to know my need.
Yeah.
I don't know my need, but I need you to know my need, kind of thing. The 3 is a successful achiever. They're adaptable, ambitious, driven, but also image conscious, right? That's the part that like we don't really want people to know about. When I first learned the Enneagram, I was like, everyone needs to know this tool because it's so helpful. Oh wait, I don't want anyone to know my shadow side. So I don't want anyone to know it because I don't want anyone to know my struggles because 3s can sometimes struggle with thinking that we are our image. What we put forth is who we are, when in fact we're a lot deeper than that. The 4 is the romantic individualist, oftentimes creative, intuitive, can sometimes be self-absorbed. A 4 is going to want to go deep fast. They do not like small talk. There's no time for that. A 4 is an amazing friend if you're grieving. They want to go deep. They want to hear you out. They can sometimes be melancholy, but they bring such beauty to the world.
I remember having a first coffee date with a 4 friend, and like within 5 minutes, I was learning like big, deep personal things about his life, which I'm all for because I'm a 2. But that's so true. Like there was no small talking. Like we went right into you know what I mean? Which sometimes it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Skip that small talk.
Absolutely. Get right to it. Good. Okay, Joe, last triad.
The anxiety triad,
Oh, dear.
which is the triad I am in. We
6s must be in there.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
It's the head triad. So we feel anxiety. The 6 often feels this anxiety as fear. And so the 7 has in response to that anxiety, we move towards security.
Okay.
So how can we control this anxiety and respond to it? So the 7 has a very external experience of this anxiety, but with huge amounts of joy.
Okay.
And they look at like new problems as ideas we get to solve and fun and adventure. The 5 is much more withdrawn with that. We need to know more things. That's the number I identify as. So we research, show up prepared. That's how we control our anxiety. And then the 6 really does move back and forth in terms of how they experience anxiety and fear. The best way to understand the Enneagram 6 is the movie Inside Out. If you've seen this, there's 4 like primary emotions inside the character's head, and there's this inner committee that's constantly trying to decide, is this safe? Am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
How's this going to work out? And that's kind of the experience of the Enneagram 6. So for the 5, 6, and 7, so much of their experience is above the neck. It's really interesting for this group, but like the growth path for all of these numbers is actually get in touch with the rest of your body. Because like when my back starts hurting, that's an indication to me that I'm stressed out and I've got anxiety and I need to go do something active and get in touch with the whole person.
Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's cool.
So 5, our investigative thinker. Joe identifies as a 5. So objective. Like, yes, in touch with emotions, but at the same time can set them aside and go, okay, let's be objective about this and let's problem solve. Really good problem solvers are 5s. What else do you want to say about a 5, Joe, since you are sitting here with us?
I don't know, and this is like I know the least about.
Yeah, one of the moments where I was listening to a podcast, I actually had to pull over because I was crying when
Oh,
they
I have not heard this story.
It was, I forget, it'll come to me. I know which podcast it is.
Sure.
I think it was the Liturgist podcast where they go through all 9 numbers and they bring in a different few people for each one, and they say the 5 can appear aloof and disinterested, but what's actually happening is it's like their brain is like above the room and they're just observing and paying attention to everything that happens. And for me, that was like, oh, that's what it's like to be a 5. Of like, it's not that I'm disinterested, because sometimes I think people might experience me as disinterested and disengaged, but it's that I'm very interested. Just how I project that isn't always clear. And so it's important for me to pay attention to my body language, to pay attention to how I show up, to how much I put out there earlier in the day, so that if the bigger thing is later in the day, like for 5s, we really protect our energy.
Don't you have a limited energy source?
We do, it's huge. And so for like me, like the hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning by myself is worth being tired because of what it does for my brain the rest of the day.
Yeah. Because you'll wake up early for that, you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where like reading, reflection, meditation, that's just so important to a daily routine. I am the best version of myself when I do that. And I had that behavior, but I didn't know why it mattered so much until I discovered the Enneagram.
Yeah, that's so smart.
Yeah.
Enneagram 6.
Thank you, Joe. I wanted to say something else about a 5.
Unless you have a 5.
You know what? And this is for all the numbers too. I think something that is kind of an aha moment. Before you know the Enneagram, you sort of expect everyone to emote the way you emote.
Oh, I was just thinking of that.
And so I think especially with a 5, when you know that someone's a 5, you think someone might be a 5, there's more grace in that, because
100%.
you go, okay, he's thinking it through. You know, like she's thinking it through. It's I think for us, when we're really outward with our energy and our emotion and our affirmation, you expect that back from someone.
Yeah.
Not everyone operates that
I remember
way.
my mom literally, I'm pretty sure my middle sister's a 6, and when you talk about it, I'll know for sure, but she was like, Liz, not everyone's gonna love you in the way you love them, or express, just because she doesn't like show it how I show it, not as outward. It doesn't mean she doesn't love me any less.
That's a
It's
limiting.
just different. It's
Yeah,
like that
it's
window.
different.
We all stand in front of a different window.
But as a kid, that was like, oh my God, duh. Like, and you really have to teach. I mean, I think that's important to teach your kids. Like,
Absolutely.
that not everyone loves and shows love the same way. It doesn't mean they don't love you.
Exactly.
So true.
Yeah. Okay, so the 6, loyal guardian, loyalist. The most faithful friends. Everybody needs a 6 in their life. They are engaging, responsible. 6s are seeking security. They fear fear. They fear chaos. A 6 is going to have an inner committee that's questioning what they're doing, decisions they're making. Should they have made the other decision? 6s, their thoughts will race over what could go wrong. And sometimes a 6 will literally think so much about that worst case scenario, they will feel the emotions linked to it.
Yeah.
And so if you have a 6 on your team, you never want to say to them, that's not a big deal, or don't worry about that, it's all going to pan out. They want to look to you as a leader that's trustworthy, that they're going to be able to respect. And so that's a key thing for the 6s.
I say they're the best and worst person to have in a budget planning meeting.
Yes.
Because they will imagine every scenario that could go wrong, which it's good to have somebody who can think like that, but then they will also oppose every increase to the budget because they see all the things that could go wrong. So they're like the best and worst person to have look at the budget. So it's probably best to get them all that information before the meeting. Because if you ask them to make a decision in the moment on like something like a budget, they're just going to be overwhelmed with fear.
Right. And we had Jamie from Michigan House was on here, and she's a 6, and we talked about managing expectations, and her and her business partner, much like Vince and I, you know, she's always making like the agenda for the meetings and what we're going to cover, and I do that as well, whereas like Ted just shows up. But for her, it's super important to manage the expectations and make sure like anything is planned out, and I think that is just such a 6 thing. But to your point, it's good to know that that's why certain people on your team do certain things, and then also to be a good leader if you have a 6 on your team to help lead them best.
Absolutely, that detail.
And now I want one in my budget. It's such a good point.
Yes, so detail oriented. They're going to dot those I's and cross those T's. Finally, 7 are entertaining optimist. The enthusiast, they're upbeat. They can also be impulsive. I know when I discovered that I was a 3, I was like, okay, cool. I identify
wanna
as
be
a
a
3,
seven.
but I want to be a 7.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be a 7.
I'm going to put on the 7 hat.
Except the sevens.
Right, because here's the thing.
Yeah, that's the
Sevens-
irony of everyone wants to be a 7, or that's the number most I hear people say they want to be. And then when you actually get to know a 7,
Oh yeah.
Because
they're the best of time.
Yeah.
You need them in
You
your
want
life.
to be with them at certain moments.
But you guys, the reality is for a 7, their own desire to constantly experience more new adventures, new, fun. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting for them. It's exhausting for those who love them because it's nonstop. And so it's kind of that endless need for more. And what they really want is to feel content and to feel satisfied.
And
but for
avoid
them, that
discomfort.
feels fleeting and avoid discomfort. Those emotions of sadness or grief are super tough for a 7. So if you have a 7 in your life that you're close to, and they let you in to some grief, it might feel uncomfortable for you because you're like, I've never seen this from this person. Don't rush them.
Right.
Sit with them in that moment, because it's a super sacred space.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to feeling that.
They're so quick on to the next thing, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so like I say, like, hey, if we talked about it in a meeting or drew it on a whiteboard, that doesn't mean it happened.
Yeah.
But if you sense that the room was going that way, a 7 will start behaving as if so. Like they will change how they're approaching. Oh, I'm not on that team anymore, so they stop coming to the team meeting. But like we haven't actually implemented that official
so funny.
decision making. So when they do slow down, it is a gift to like sit in that space with what is happening, because they do have that anxiety and fear in them as a 7. But they're also the best people who they embrace the new idea. Like
Right.
where like you could have a team working for 6 months on something and then it completely falls apart. The 7 is not upset. They're
Yeah.
just on to the next thing,
So
which
true.
is a gift.
Yeah.
Like the other numbers have a lot to like. That's
Sure.
that's the joy of a 7 is
Yeah.
they just pivot. Their life is a pivot.
Right.
Life is a pivot.
That's true.
So you guys, that was like lightning round, going through all the numbers, hitting on all the triads. Now we're excited to dive into communication styles
Yes.
with you guys.
I'm excited
Okay,
about this.
and there are 3 main styles. This diagram is so fascinating,
I'm
isn't
so
it? The
excited
way
for
that these things intersect. And so the main communication styles are, okay, aggressive or assertive, withdrawn, or compliant dependent.
Okay.
Okay? And Vince, for you and I, we're part of that aggressive, assertive 3, 7s, and 8s.
Okay.
Are going to be more aggressive in our communication style. I don't like to use the word demanding, but
Direct.
I've heard-
direct.
I've got feedback.
direct.
Direct's a nice way
Yeah,
to say it.
yeah.
Not feedback.
A 7 is going to show up in a room and go, hey, I'm here. Now everything can be more lively. An 8 is going to show up and say, hey, I'm here. Deal with me.
Yep.
And a 3 is going to show up and be a little bit more subtle, because a 3 is going to show up and say, love me because look at all that I've accomplished.
Right. I actually made an agenda for this meeting, which means I'm going to run it, and the
Right.
7th and the 8th doesn't realize that.
Yeah.
Right. That's where the
Exactly.
3 has that
Totally.
direct, like aggressive, like. And aggressive's not. I mean, it can be over aggressive, but it's just how they communicate.
You always say like the alpha male, like that's part of what that is that's just that.
Yeah, like that's funny that you said that agenda thing, because I wouldn't say I'm so like dialed in like that, but in my head I do have the 3 things that the meeting is about, right? And so
Exactly.
I'll let everyone like yeah, okay. So we're gonna do this and this. Let's go, right? Like, and when you brought that up, I'm like that's so true. I do that all the time.
Well, in 3, 7, and 8, these 3 numbers often find themselves as a boss, as a team leader, not necessarily because they wanted, because they were 3. The 3 wanted it, but those 3 outgoing, they're a little more outgoing, and I think that just for some reason gets you're gonna run with the baton because
I feel like you're
spoke
always
up.
driving the ship. Like I feel like that, always driving the ship. Like always.
Do you feel that way, Vince?
Yeah, well, maybe we can have some dialogue about this.
Gon' learn, you gon' learn. It was a
What's up, guys? Subscribe. Tell your best friend, tell your mom, tell your neighbor, tell your 4-year-old kid. Please listen.
We appreciate you. And thank you so much for all of your 5-star reviews on Apple. That helps us get this podcast out to other people who will enjoy. Thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you.
And with that, enjoy the rest of the episode.
You gon' learn, you gon' learn.
Well, maybe we can have some dialogue about this. Like, I feel like we do, for sure. But I don't know if it's like a 4 thing or just my personality is that I necessarily don't want to drive the ship all the time, or maybe be in the day-to-day as much.
Sure.
Right, but we are going west.
Correct. That's
Right.
what I mean. But that's what I'm talking about.
So like that's what, yeah. So I don't really care about but we're
He'll
going
let me
west.
drive, but I'm following his direction.
I think for the
Sure.
3 in particular, drive and motivation.
Yeah.
Right? And the 3, 7, and 8, they have, just because of their communication style, they have this like drive and motivation that really shows up in others' experience. And so on the other hand, if you have those people in your life and they're like disappearing and disengaging and they're going quiet, that's a cue for you to go, hey, is everything okay? Mm-hmm. Like usually you show up with a list and here we go, let's roll. Mm-hmm. Or here you show up with a new idea, or you show up with a way to like get this done. That's sort of the 8, like 8 want to go to action so fast. Mm-hmm. But if an 8 isn't going to action, that's actually an invitation to say, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
What else is going on?
Absolutely. It's really interesting when you have like
Parker, you listen to this?
When-
Right.
it's really interesting when you have a 3 and an 8 on a team together. And Helen Palmer has done some really interesting. We won't have time to dive into all the different
I know.
relationship combinations, but Helen Palmer, in her book, The Enneagram and Love and Work, has done such good work
We'll link to that in
surrounding.
the show notes.
Yes, really good work surrounding how types interact in the workplace, in love relationships, and what she would say about a 3 and an 8 is that a 3 is the producer. They're gonna go get it done, but the 8 is the leader. So if you have a 3 in a leadership position over an 8, you've really got to make sure
Yikes.
that 8 respects the 3.
Yes.
And I'm going to be honest, it's best if that 3 has hiring, firing power, because
Yeah.
that's going to build in that respect. And so yeah, some really interesting
That was a
power
bold statement,
dynamics
Meredith.
there.
Oh.
Woo! I'm just saying, it's
Yeah, but that's
There's a
also
lot
the,
there.
like with the 8, so like I contend that each number is a paradox, and it's a paradox that you can't resolve. So we each have this inner tension that is like pulling us, and that's just our journey. If we like the protective challenger, and so for the 8, the gift of the Enneagram is to go, I don't have to challenge everything. And when you're really unhealthy, and this is true of every number, when you're really unhealthy, like for me as a 5, like I don't have to know everything,
Right.
right? Or for the 3, I don't have to climb every hill.
Yeah.
I don't have to finish
low-key have
every
to climb
task,
every hill.
right? And so, yeah,
Maybe not today.
There you go. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
So, yeah, maybe not.
that is okay, you guys.
No, but,
And
but seriously though, like
Yeah.
no, you don't have to.
You don't have to, and
No.
that's the key thing, you guys. Because what is this really about? Okay, what is the Enneagram really about? It's about relationships, and it's about freedom. It's about getting outside our default patterns and waking up to the fact that we don't have to do things the way we've always done them. Default is not necessarily good.
Right.
You wake up and go, I can make a choice.
Yeah.
And so, what?
We were leading a group coaching thing, and the last question was, what do you do with that not being able to resolve this?
Yeah.
Because that
right.
like there are some things you're just not going to resolve, and I don't know if we had discussed who was going to ask which question.
I was like, dedact that question.
And Meredith like read the question, and as soon as it came out, I could just see it on her face of like, I hate this question.
But okay, one of the things that I really think helps us resolve this is the idea of presence. To just be present. And instead of being a future thinker like 3, 7s, and 8s are when we talk about orientation to time, 3, 7s, and 8s, we're always thinking future.
Always.
Okay? And so we are feelings repressed. 3, 7s, and 8s are feelings repressed. Okay? For an 8, they're going to show up with their anger and their passion. And feel like that's emotion. It's a emotion, but it's one of the many. A 7 is going to show up and be really in touch with their joyful, happy, enthusiastic emotions and think that they're showing up with their emotions. That is a small segment of emotions. And a 3 is going to go, hey, I'm going to figure out how all you are feeling and then use that to our advantage. It sounds terrible, but
True.
it's true. And so feelings repressed.
I thought I was gonna be a spy when I was
It's
a
not
kid.
technically being vulnerable if you just need to know emotions.
You just understand, in a weird way, I try not to use it against people.
That's
the biggest
huge
thing.
thing.
Because you like know it so quickly, and you're like, I know everything.
You have to be healthy.
Build you or destroy you like
You
this.
gotta be healthy.
3, 7, 8. That's one communication stance.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are 6 other numbers.
That's right, Joe. We should move
We're
on.
having a moment right now. Do they really?
One final thing about threes is that, like, I know that I have to pick and choose how often I encourage that vulnerability with emotions, because for one, I don't want to get shut out or cut off, like literally hung up on, or like you know what I mean.
Oh, you will get hung up on.
No, literally. Like the minute we get to something deep, I gotta go. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I really encourage you, if you love someone that's a 3, to just be patient and just keep doing it, but you have to spread it out and space it out and wait for the right moment when they can really receive that and be open to it, and know that even if it doesn't happen right away, it doesn't mean it's not worth encouraging them to do that.
Absolutely.
Even though it's like gonna
Absolutely.
suck. Especially as a 2, we don't like that like rejection of it. But
It's usually best to approach us with something like that when we're not busy, when
100%.
we're not in the middle of a task, because we're just going to feel like that's a distraction.
100%.
And even if that is a place we know we should go and we should step into that and we should work on feeling those things and sharing those things and growing our relationship by being vulnerable.
Yeah, it's because now we don't
But how
understand.
would you respond?
We fully understand what's going on. We're just purposely
You're
not
always trying to get something. You're
Yeah.
always working and always doing things so that are
Yeah, I think
there's
for
never
the-
like I'm chill. There's no
I think
like 15 minutes. You can catch me.
The thing for the 3, 7, and 8 is their intensity.
yeah.
Their intensity
Sure.
will drive through and over others to get to whatever it is they're wanting to get at, right? And so the other numbers need to where we have to engage and do the work to show up. The 3, 7, and 8 do show up, and then the 3 though, once they get through their list, they're on to the next thing. And so some of it is
Yes.
the being versus doing. Is the
True.
journey for everyone, right? Everyone, because I think a lot of us have a lot of 3 in us because corporate America is an
Yeah.
Enneagram 3,
Right.
right?
America, they say, is an Enneagram.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Society.
so we all get celebrated for that, and so it's just to know we're humans.
Yeah. First.
Right.
We're humans first, right? And those emotions are right there under the surface. And that's the thing with the Enneagram is when you start to see that, oh, it was right there.
So you mean everyone does have emotions? Everyone?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Get
We're working on that.
Get that record.
All right, let's go.
Yes.
Let's move.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, 2 more. Yeah.
Okay.
We won't have as much to say. Don't worry.
Okay, so the withdrawn stance, our 4s,
Passive.
our 5s, and our 9s. So all these numbers are using different strategies or the same strategies to get what they want, get what they
Isn't
need.
it to get love, or is that way too blanket? Isn't the whole motivation to be loved?
Well, okay, so
Or
Liz,
is that-
yes and
sorry.
no. I
Okay.
would say for the feelings triad, yes.
Ah.
Okay, so for the 8, 9, 1
feelings.
gut triad, okay, let me see.
And
wait,
it's okay if
wait,
that's
Joe,
not-
because all of a sudden I'm getting my lines crossed here because
It's our motivation to what was
So we're-
it depends
I help
on
to be loved. Does somebody what is an 8?
because in your triad, this is one more amazing thing, really quick. The triad 891 has one of each communication type. Okay,
I
but
see.
what are those
Yeah.
types trying to get to? Autonomy or control.
Got it.
Okay, so all
That's
3
not love for
communication
everyone.
types are represented there, but they're trying to get to.
Got it. Okay.
So
Okay.
a good example of this is the 9 and the 2. Often people really struggle to determine am I a 9 or am I a 2, and it's very subtle. I had this with actually some tests. I can't take any more Enneagram assessments online because I know too much about them.
Yeah.
But I'll test. The first time I took an assessment, I had 92% 5 and 89% 3.
Oh wow.
And so I actually had to do some work to go, okay, which is it, right? And there are these subtle things, and there's these core fears and core desires.
Yeah.
And so the 9 and the 2, the 9, their core desire is that their presence matters. Right? Or core long,
Yeah.
right? They want to know that they matter, and that if you have a 9 on your team, they may not say anything, but it's important to ask them their opinion, and then they will give a contribution. They may not have given any input because they value peace, right? And so they have a passive, withdrawn communication style, right? Well, so then the two has a different like thing. So we all have these like messages, and for the 9, it's about their presence mattering more so than the 2 is about how do I relate and help you.
Yeah.
Right. It's more about like relating than it is seeking love.
It's always like it's like outwardly like.
Yeah, and so there are these subtle nuances and differences, and so and some of the numbers do have so much in common.
Right. Okay. Sorry for getting.
No, that was perfect, you guys.
That's
That's
a
what
great
this
question.
time's for.
Yeah.
We're like geeking out on this
Absolutely.
episode.
This is
learning
so good.
much. Oh my god.
Yeah, so the 9, 4, and 5 will withdraw, not necessarily because they're disinterested. It's just how they respond in the moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so the growth path for them is to get more in touch with the moment. Right? And for others to recognize that, hey, if you put things on them in the moment, it probably isn't helpful. And so they, like with an Enneagram 9, they say, hey, tomorrow by noon, can you give me your decision?
Right.
But if you just like barge into their office and say, hey, I need this, this, and this, and this from you, they're just going to be overwhelmed.
Right.
Not because they don't care or they're incompetent or any of those things.
Right.
They just they think about keeping the peace.
Yes.
And so any action may disrupt the peace.
Right.
And so they need time to like sit back and reflect.
Right.
And process. And that's true of the 9, 4, and 5, but they all process that in different ways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then and even for these, I would think we always say about the Enneagram 9, a face down moment is when they have an outburst of anger, and then kind of like try to figure out why did I get angry,
right,
and why did I have an outburst. The same is true of the 4 and the 5. Like, why did I have that outburst?
Yeah.
Like it's getting in touch with like, oh, I have these things, I have these thoughts, I have these feelings. I need to be more aware of them, and others also need to be aware of them as well, because we all emote differently.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Those feelings, I tell you what.
Right.
So Joe, remind us, the 4, 5, 9, they're all doing repressed. Okay. Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not doing things. They are.
No.
All of those numbers are busy doing things. For a 9, it might look like a lot of busy work. A 9 might make a to-do list, and instead of doing the most important thing first, they're going to start in the middle. And then what was most important to get accomplished that day didn't happen.
Or the to-do list was just not really effective to their goal.
Exactly. So they're still doing. The 4 and the 5, they're doing in different ways. The 5 oftentimes will do a ton of pre-planning. Because they think that if they plan well, they're saving their energy. Okay? So I'm going to plan a lot, but I'm not actually going to execute or do.
Got it.
And then for the 4, same thing. They're doing things, but not doing perhaps the most important thing. For a 4, that can look like maybe leaving tasks not completed. Different from a 7. A 7 can kind of tigger from place to place.
Yeah.
A 4 is more so like not completing an internship because it was boring or too mundane.
Or not authentic to what they're really into.
Or
Authenticity,
exactly.
yeah.
I feel like authenticity in 4s is so...
Their unique contribution.
Yeah.
So if they can't make their unique contribution, they don't know what it is, they haven't discovered it.
100%.
Cannot do.
I know 4s that will back out of work commitments because it's not authentic to their true selves and what they. Whereas like I would never be caught dead getting like not doing something I committed to. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And that stance or communication style, they're oriented to the past. So a 9 is going to be able to give you so many different examples. They're going to be more, dwell on how this happened in the past. For a 4, envy's really tough. Social media can be so hard for a 4 because they're constantly comparing. A 5 is going to think, hey, it worked well this way last time. Can we do it again that way? What would you say else about that, Joe? In terms of orientation to time. Oh, can I give a really fun example? Super fast.
Yes.
Okay, of our working together. Okay, so
This is the best kind of example.
we had an inquiry come into our website, and it was with a really awesome nonprofit, and I was like, Joe, this is amazing. You know, I'm future thinking. Like, this is awesome. This is a big deal. I'm hyped in advance. Okay. Joe was also hyped, just more in a reserved fashion. Okay. But then after the workshop, he was like, wow. That was amazing. We need to send a thank you note. So like I'm forward thinking. And then once the workshop is done, I'm like, hey, we'll connect with those folks. He's like, yes, thank you notes. We need to go to this event and that event. And it was a really good compliment to each other.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, we push each other in different ways, right? And that's like when the Enneagram becomes next level, when you start to go, oh, I need to be pushed by the energy of other numbers.
Yeah.
And we actually balance
100%.
each other.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have blinders just if you only... I mean, I'd love to hire all twos, trust me, but it's like not good to just...
That sounds exhausting.
I know, it probably would be.
To me, at least.
There'd be so much verbal processing all the time.
Oh my god. Can we get the twos now?
But the food, but the food would be excellent. The drinks
There we
would be
go.
like so many
Oh.
options.
Perfect.
Like
It almost
yeah.
makes it worth it, but then you're like, oh my god.
Okay, you guys.
All right, one more.
Compliant or dependent. Those are our ones, our twos, our sixes. Their orientation to time is present. They're not going to dwell on the past. They're not going to worry about the future. They are thinking repressed. Okay, and you're like, what? Ones, twos, sixes are thinking all the time. But a one is going to spend its time thinking, beating itself up
Yeah,
with that
you
inner
suck, you
critic.
didn't do it right.
The two is constantly thinking about relationships, Les. Like some different wisdom teachers in the Enneagram will say that a two spends like 80% of their thought life thinking about relationships.
Yeah.
Some of that's productive thinking, some
Mostly
of it
it's not.
isn't. Exactly.
I actually got into Enneagram because it turned my brain off to thinking about relationships, because now I'm like using the analytical side of my brain versus like the emotional feeling side.
Yeah.
So, or even just business podcasts or even taking courses, but anything that makes my brain work, not on feeling, like
Yes.
is so good for me, because otherwise I'm just like, shit, he's mad at me. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He didn't, it's so stupid.
You had a great quote on one of your recent podcasts. It was something like, it was something along the lines of like, don't worry so much about what other people think because they're not paying that close of attention
No one's noticing.
anyway.
100%.
Is that essentialism?
Noticing.
Probably.
I mean, for a two
Yeah.
and a two, essentialism is going to be
That's probably why it changed my life.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and gut wrenching when you get to it.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's like you can only say yes to what matters most.
So
And for the
true.
two, their superpower is saying yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard to. Yeah.
So finally, you guys, for the six, they spend a lot of time, as we discussed before, thinking about worst case scenario. And a lot of times those things don't happen, right? Now, granted, COVID.
The
is a
pandemic
different thing.
year
I was going to say
makes
COVID is like. I have a friend
was telling you.
who identifies as a 6, and she was like, the pandemic is the Enneagram 6 Olympics.
Yes.
Because
They're
they
made for it, and they've been expecting it.
Exactly.
And they're
Yeah.
literally made for it.
Right. I have a friend. He literally said, "Hey, every time we talk, can you just tell me it's going to be okay?"
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
was early day, like couple weeks in, and it's like, or
Yeah.
just a text, "Hey, it's going to be okay."
Oh, yeah.
They just need that reassurance because they have imagined all the ways this could get worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which in a crisis is actually someone you need on your team.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's very important, actually.
Yeah.
guys, we made it through the
I
communication
know.
styles.
I love that.
Okay.
So, okay, why don't you talk about some maybe advice or tips about how to communicate better, or maybe some common pitfalls you see?
Yeah.
Maybe we could use us as an example too.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause-
We do have a lot of 3 listeners,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of 2s
Yeah.
in the world with like moms and teachers and nurses.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
maybe
Yes.
some 3-2 communication.
she's a 2-3, and I'm a
Absolutely.
3-4.
Yeah.
How does that work?
The first thing that comes to my mind, you guys, that I will just share.
So fishing.
Wait,
How's that work?
Hang
Does that work well?
Yeah, he's trying to. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, you
He's
guys.
still trying to feel this thing out.
At any moment, right?
Oh my God.
So
that's
one of the
funny.
things, because people ask us all the time, like, what's the best romantic pairing? What's the best
Yeah.
workplace pairing? We are not going to lean into that because
Next question,
all
please.
the numbers bring something beautiful to the table. All the numbers are necessary. There's going to be different pain points for each relationship, of course. Something that I think about for 3s, I think it's really important that we. One of the things that Joe said is we're always going to show up big. And we're gonna show up thinking that important thing is somehow connected to us. And so if we can still help steer the ship, but also make sure we've invited others to the table. And I think one of the big things, and then to listen to those other people with genuine listening instead of just thinking about, I can't wait to get to my 3 points.
Yep. Working on it.
That would be great.
Maybe put the phone down from time to time.
The other big thing about this is when you think about the stances, communication styles, the orientation to time piece is really big. Because and you've talked about this, Liz, if Liz is always in the present and Vince is always in the future, it's going to be a disconnect for you guys. And so you want to be thinking about that with your teams as well. You kind of want to address every time, I don't want to say every time you're in the meeting, but you want to be thinking about the past, present, and the future, so that everybody at the table has a comfort level.
And also, like, I think Liz is healthy enough and I'm healthy enough where it does actually work well, because I'm always on, okay, this is where we're going to be in like 5 months, 6 months, a year from now. Liz is like, okay, this is what we're doing right now. Do you like the podcast title? And I'm like, yeah, podcast titles are fine. They're great.
Never
But I've been workshopping 10 other names.
Right? Or you don't want to go through the process of,
it's more difficult.
That name is horrible, and deal with like, well, you don't like it. And like, you know what? The name is fine, Liz.
I love it. BT Dubs. I think it's fabulous.
Oh no, I love it too. And so, but just giving that tip, like, there's a lot of benefits for people who are not like you, and I learned that from Liz. Like, it's okay to have people who think different, and you respect them for that, because there is value in that. And as a 3, it's hard to admit that like you're not right all the time, and it's like, okay, there's value in that situation.
Well, the other thing I think that we've learned is that, you know, 3s always want to fast forward through the emotional aspect of life because they think it's slowing them down from achieving. And what I've explained to Vince is that the quicker we can just get through this emotional part, the faster I can get back to achieving. But you can't fast forward.
Yeah, so there's this thing I use with relationships called a communication loop.
Ooh.
And so each number has an emotional activator. And so for the 2, the emotional activator is inconsideration.
Ooh.
And for the 3, it's obstacles. So when you feel like something is inconsiderate, people aren't being taken care of, and you feel like something's getting in the way, so we talk about your thoughts and feelings getting charged, and then that's the moment to take a deep breath and go, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Before you go to action. And because then you go to action, and so if you are feeling like that was inconsiderate, and then you go up here, well, that's another obstacle that he's feeling, and then you go here, and so then you do like an infinity loop, and you go back and forth. These are the like.
That's why you've got to wait for the right time.
Right. It's not about the dishwasher and how you load it.
100%.
Right.
No.
But it is about, and then you can find in a working relationship. Oh, I felt like this, did this. You felt this, did this, and it's just getting to. It's an invitation to know the loop you're running. It's like with your spouse, it's the argument you always will have.
Right. 100%.
And it's not ever about the dishes.
No, never.
It's just about how your relationship functions.
Right.
And so the gift of the Enneagram is it gives you language to go, oh, here's what I was thinking and feeling, and that's why I did this.
Exactly.
For me, as a 5, where I want to like withdraw, I notice my right foot turning.
No way. Like you're trying to get out of something?
Yeah, I literally am trying to leave. Right? And so it's like, so that's where it's like getting in touch with your body, right?
Oh, that's so funny.
Because you like, and that's a learned behavior over years and years of like, I don't like this conflict. I'm overwhelmed. I need to go think about it. So I'm actually going to try to physically leave.
What type are your spouses?
Yeah.
Well, Tiffany identifies as an 8, and so she literally has like will follow me out of the room, right? And like, but then like the gift of the Enneagram has been like, okay, what are those things? And for me, when I feel my right leg start to turn, I like turn it back, take a deep breath, and go, can you repeat what you just said? Because I was trying to like exit.
Peace out.
Yeah.
So I need I need to hear that again because I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
So my husband is a 3, wing 4.
Oh, like me and Rich, same type.
Yes, exactly. And that wing just flavors it in such a cool way. So we've got those same core motivations, but then Eric's dominant wing is 4, and it just flavors his number so differently than my 2 wing does.
Yeah,
totally. Liz, am like super people pleaser, super tough to say no. I don't like disappointing people, don't like letting people down. Whereas Eric he doesn't have as much trouble saying no. Doesn't worry so much about people pleasing, but is more concerned about creative excellence. And every project that he does, he has his own production company, so every project that he does needs to be better than the last, with more creativity and more uniqueness. And so oftentimes, I think what he brings, his vision for a project is here, and a client's might be here,
or the budget might be here.
Also that, Liz. Yes. Also that. So
He showed a videographer what he wanted to do, and he was like, "Well, that's $40,000.
Yeah.
That video you're looking for."
Oh.
Which, you know, we've talked about. You don't want to have a bunch of those people on your team either, but there is some validity to. You do always have these like high creative.
Your vision is here.
and also just creativity and being unique is important to
You
you.
gotta be
whereas,
okay
like,
with not. It's hard to be okay with not it looking how you want it to look.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aesthetics matter so much
So much.
to a 4 and to a 3 wing 4.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see quickly though how like the Enneagram just takes you deep
Oh yeah.
so fast, right? And so like we say like, hey, if you're going into this and you have a partner, you should probably tell them
Yeah.
that I'm reading about the Enneagram, and would you maybe look at it too, because you start to evaluate others, and like people will come up to you and go, hey, you're an Enneagram coach, can you type me? And I'll say, I don't know you.
Right.
I would love to go on a journey with you and help
Right.
discover that, and you know, here's how you can do that, right? But it is this like transformative tool that like you get into the shallow end of the pool, and then you get to that edge, and you quickly realize
Oh yeah.
there's
you guys.
so much here.
Is a deep dive. So for people that might want to learn more, and we can link to all these resources, but what resources, I know for me, it was the Wisdom of Enneagram book was super helpful for me. I read it, I go to it all the time, it's huge.
Yeah.
But what other resources do you recommend for people that maybe aren't sure of their type and want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So a really common recommendation is The Road Back to You. And I know, Liz, you listened to the podcast. Ian Morgan-Cron and Suzanne Stabile wrote that book together. And they both have fabulous podcasts. Typology is Ian Morgan-Cron's, and The Enneagram Journey is Suzanne Stabile's. And so The Road Back to You does a fabulous job. It's really readable.
Yes.
It's super fun. They give great examples.
Yeah, more of a narrative.
It's more of a
Yeah.
narrative, exactly. A great primer, if
Totally.
you will, and can be great to just read through the types, because what we would say, people always wonder, well, how do I learn my type? And
Right.
yes, there are so many assessments out there, but what we recommend is you don't rely on an assessment. We like to say that an assessment will probably get you to one of your top 3 numbers.
Yeah.
Your top 3 will probably be in there, but that really it comes through reading, learning about the numbers, having clarifying dialogue with those you've known for years, people who have known you, that it's not just take a test and you're set. The journey is much longer than that.
And if your type makes you uncomfortable, you found your type.
Most likely, if you're feeling pretty exposed.
Usually that's true. Yeah.
by it.
So Wisdom and the book you've
Yeah.
mentioned, like that's the like classic textbook.
Oh, so good.
So good. There's a smaller book called The Essential Enneagram, which includes a narrative assessment that we use a lot in our coaching and training. And it's a little thin textbook. We actually brought a couple copies for you today.
I feel like I bought that by accident once, and it was
Yeah.
like way cheaper. And I was like, this wasn't.
Yeah,
but-
they're right here.
Okay.
We can show them right there if you want to grab them. And so what I love about this one is there's like a couple pages on each number, and then in the back, see Enneagram 5, we read the footnotes.
Right,
and all those
you
things.
do?
We get to the
Everyone
end.
looked at the
We get to the end, and
Not just
it's like how is a 3 and a 5 alike? How is a 3 and
Right.
a 1 alike? And usually, if you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm this number or that number, you have to look at okay, what are the subtle
differentiators.
differences?
Yeah. Like
in
2s
there?
and 9s are often-
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's what that's a go-to book.
Are 3s and 8s the same way? Because like for a long time, I don't know if I was an 8 or a 3.
Oh, that's a common mistyping for people.
Okay.
Super
Yeah.
common.
Okay.
And
What's
it just
the
comes
main
down to your
differentiator?
motivation. It comes
Okay.
down to your motivation
Anger or shame.
and your emotion.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is your emotional struggle? Do you struggle more with shame, or do you struggle more with anger?
Oh man.
Are you driven more by success, or are you driven to protect?
Since you were the biggest 3 I've ever known.
Oh yeah, probably definitely success. But I do have this weird thing where if you're in my inner circle, I protect you.
Yeah.
And if you fall out of grace, and that's how I describe it, then like you're like to the wolves.
And that's a real 8 thing.
And so like I have
And you
that.
are always right. Which
That's
is an
also a
8
real
thing.
8 thing.
Oh man.
Oh dear.
You might-
Guys, stay
Stay
tuned.
tuned to next episode.
So we haven't talked about tri-types yet, which kind of gets
Okay.
into some of that stuff of
Okay.
how, and then subtypes
Yeah.
and how those
True.
things stack. Because
What's a tri-type?
so the numbers, so
Oh,
you
we
have
go to
one in
health.
each. No, you have one in each triad that is like your top in that triad,
Oh,
and then
okay.
they stack. So like you have your primary one, and then
Uh-huh.
your secondary, and then your tertiary. And so like I would be a 5-3-1. So in each triad, you have one that you most gravitate towards that kind of energy.
Okay.
Doesn't change your core type.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm definitely a 3. I have 8 tendencies.
Sure damn do.
There you go.
Sure
There you
do.
go. Yeah. And you share a communication style.
Yeah. Because my best friend Parker's.
I just learned some jazz
We haven't
today. It's true.
Now we get into it. It does definitely feel like he definitely respects me. But you can definitely tell that like with other people it's him all the way.
You're in his inner circle.
Yeah.
So he is going to protect you, and then he'll expect you to protect him.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
That's cool.
Such good stuff.
Okay.
Well, you guys have a real quick before we close out. You guys have a business, so I want you
Yeah.
guys to plug that real quick.
Yeah.
For
Tell us about it.
Yeah.
And who could take advantage of it?
Okay, so it's called Growing with the Enneagram. And it started as a series of workshops, but absolutely one-on-one coaching, group coaching, events. We did a series of really fun events last December called Enneagram and Cocktails, where we worked with a dear friend, Kate Bolt, who's living lark. I think you guys know
Love
Kate.
her.
And we worked with her to pair different cocktails with Enneagram numbers and sold out those events in Holland
fun.
and in Grand Rapids. So,
It was a
but we're
riot.
really
So
all
cool.
about helping people get to know themselves better because it's going to improve every relationship in their life. So.
Yeah, so if you have a business or a team, the Enneagram and Cocktails is actually a really fun event. So on the other side of COVID, I hope we can really
Right.
look at that. And like, so you want to do something fun for your people on a Friday at 3, we could come in and
Right.
do drinks and do
That's
a little bit of
cool.
teaching. So like fun and learning. The workshops are a way to like kind of push a whole group forward. But if you want to go further with this, if you want to become the best version of yourself, you need a guide.
Yeah.
And you got to get coaching, and you got to have like, or a group of folks that you can go through that journey together. And so we're actually going to launch a couple groups this fall where we have 6 people, and it's a 3-week journey. And we kind of like 1, 2, 3, kind of like introduce the tool, clarify your type, and then put you on your path of growth. And so we'll be sharing those on our social media handles shortly, and
Okay,
hopefully
I'm
they
here
can be
for
in the
this.
show notes.
Sign us up.
Honestly, I'm ready to go.
Right. Yep.
And where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so our handles on Facebook and on Insta are enneagram.grow.
Perfect. And we'll put all this in the show notes. Guys, thank you so much.
Hey,
I'm
thanks for
just so
having us.
excited and I can't wait for people to hear this. So.
We're super grateful. It was a total blast.
Yeah,
Thanks for
I
coming
enjoyed
on.
it. Learned a lot.
So good.
All right, guys.
This jazz, 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 jazz. Ooh, I even got your girl some jazz yesterday. True, 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 true. No, I'm just playing.
Let's make sure you subscribe, and subscribe, baby.